Hey everybody, Mark Johnson here, founder and creative director of Able Ape Studios, back again with another book review. In today's book review, I am reviewing Life and Death, Sex, Drugs, Money, and God. This is the autobiography of Russell Simmons. If you're not familiar who Russell Simmons is, he was or is a media mogul, currently a media mogul. He kind of made his chops in hip hop, the early days of hip hop, and getting that and making that a legitimate kind of a genre of music. From the beginnings to like the early beginnings and then middle, and currently he's kind of, like I said, a media mogul. He does a lot of different things, or he has his hands in a lot of different things, but some of you may remember him from Fat Boy or Baby Fat, Kamora Lee. So he's done a lot of different things, and this book kind of gives you a real good overview and a behind the scenes look at his life. He was born in Hollis, Queens, to husband and wife that were well educated. They went to universities, and they were always studying. So in his life, he was always the kid on the block that had the knowledge, had the family who kind of pushed him to kind of learn more. But at the same time, he always wanted to be fresh, dress fresh, be cool, be that guy. In the book, he kind of talks about his teenage years through to about his young adult age, where he was very, very influenced by street culture. He always wanted to be a businessman, and he always saw himself as someone who was gonna make it big. And so he kind of took that to path. We talk about the sex, drugs, and money and God. I think there's always a transition within that. Obviously, he liked models. At a certain point, he was heavily into drugs, but he kind of switched at a certain point, seeing that that kind of lifestyle wasn't gonna, he wasn't gonna be able to maintain that for very long and still be successful. I learned a lot of just kind of little tidbits about some of the industry, from the music industry. He talked about some of the deals that he was working on with some artists throughout his career that some went well, some went bad. He also talked about some of the deals that he wished he had made. He started at record label, which was Def Jam, and he talked about some of the people that he worked with that were good businessmen and other people who were just kind of hustlers. There was even talk about how he kind of transitioned into the fashion industry. He kind of gave a brief look at what was going on at that time within the fashion industry and how he kind of made his way into that. He also talked about how he was able to get into filmmaking and into Hollywood, and some of the things that behind the scenes that really give you a different look when you're a real player in that industry. Like I said, I enjoyed the book. I've been really waiting to read this book. It's been on my shelf for a long time, and I finally got the chance, or I really put myself in position to read it, and it was enjoyable. I think for those who still or maybe may not be familiar with Russell Simmons, currently he's kind of, again, like a media mogul. He's got some strong websites that are out there that are kind of really promoting the culture of hip hop and fashion. I mentioned Kamora Lee. That was his wife at one point, and she was the one that kind of developed Baby Fat, if you know that brand of clothing for women. But yeah, overall it was just a really easy read. I think being that he was from the streets, in a sense, like kind of grew up in the streets, and he had that kind of mindset. I think his outlook on the rest of the industries and how things kind of developed is different than maybe what you'd hear. Like I read the book, what was it? Richard Branson's book. I read Richard Branson's book, and it's completely a different story. It's just so interesting. I'm not necessarily going to go too much into the differences or the similarities, but that both of those people were guys who were destined to be something bigger than they were. At a certain point, they had the dreams, they had the big dreams, they had the drive and the willingness to kind of work through it. I think what I really enjoyed about this book is how he talks about building something from nothing, and surrounding yourself with people who are going to advance you rather than just taking advantage or just kind of be there just to kind of be there because it's the hot thing. I think that was great. I think another thing he talked about was Hollywood. Obviously I want to be someone who makes films, so when he was talking about making films and some of the struggles that he went through to make some of these films or be part of some of these films or film projects, it was an eye-opener. That business is pretty cutthroat. Not that any other business is not as cutthroat, but Hollywood's pretty cutthroat, and you just don't see that because we're basically the consumer, so we're just kind of watching and paying the ticket to go watch the movie. Outside of that, I think this can be a great primer for anyone who's trying to, learn an industry, learn a business. And I think that if you take the time to, read autobiographies like this, people who've done it before, you can really get some really great tidbits that you can use in your journey to success. So, I hope this book review was helpful to you. Maybe you might want to read it, maybe you may not. But I'll continue to do more book reviews. I have some more books coming up shortly, so stay tuned for that. If you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing with the channel, definitely subscribe. And if there's a book that maybe you think that would be a good read for me, definitely leave that in the comment box below. I'd love to kind of maybe check out some of these books. I've got a few people who already made some suggestions, so I'm putting that on the list of books to read. So, like we always do at this time, have a blessed day. See you on the flip side. Let's go.